Mail everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I'm gonna talk a couple things. There are some requests for a few stocks on my YouTube channel, so I figure I'd just talk about them on a video, kind of consult them together. First question I had was, what happened with Google? Is their quantum computing thing real or not? Whether or not this big giant move that I just had, whether or not it's sustainable. I'm just gonna tell you this thing here. This is the weekly chart of Google. I did not change a thing. I'm gonna show you a drawing that I did many weeks ago. And this is a Gantt square that I've drawn. This is 360 and this is 1. And I honestly drew this when price went from like the 180s down to like the 160s when everybody was really kind of starting to freak out. I did not change the arrow at all. I actually did not even realize that I drew this. but what I was really seeing was this, right? This Gantt chart has worked extremely well. You can see that the angle and the arc over here was serving as resistance, and it was able to push through, use that angle as resistance all the way up, was unable to build up enough energy to get up to the arc above, so it had to come back down, back test the arc almost perfectly, came back down, reclaimed horizontal level, and it tried to push up, but it just didn't really have enough momentum. So I thought that it was probably going to get back pretty close to this horizontal line around the low 160s, and sure enough it did. Didn't really touch it, but close enough, right? And I thought it was going to bounce from here. It's going to be bouncing pretty hard from there going up, because you are basically back testing the arc down here below. So the next logical level is going to be up here at the arc above. It went a little bit faster than I thought it would, but you're really hitting an area of resistance up here. The reason why I say that, and I also think that, if you ask me when I was going to push for resistance, I think the answer is yes. And I think it's probably going to take time. I'm going to show you why that is. The reason why I think it's going to be hitting some pretty strong resistance soon is, well, it's hitting the arc up here very soon, right? And on top of that, you also do a fib level from the last cycle top here around January 2022. If I can drag this all the way down there. And you can look at both the fib level from a linear scale as well as the log scale. And what you're going to see here was this. You're getting really close to the 1.618. You are getting, actually probably going to get rejected here by on the week at around $193.70. I think that's probably most likely to be the case, because that's the 1.618 here, and this is the linear scale, right? The other way to kind of look at it is, well, what if you don't look at the linear scale, look at the log scale? You also have the 1.414 over here too, which is 194, which is going to be resistance. So I think price probably end up getting underneath these numbers that I was just kind of showing you here, and probably going to get rejected so far, but it probably is going to build up a lot more energy trying to push through the arc here. We'll see. I can totally see this kind of hanging around here for a few weeks, trying to reset some indicators before maybe pushing through the arc, back testing this and going up higher. But the reason why I feel confident about this chart moving up overall is because it's starting to build up a lot of momentum. What I mean by that is that the Bollinger Band on the weekly here is really starting to expand. And the Bollinger Band here on the monthly, on the upper Bollinger Band, this push up here, you can see how it's kind of getting up to the upper Bollinger Band resistance here, but it's starting to re-expand the upper Bollinger Band. So because of the bullish momentum that it had, and because of the correction that it had down here, it's really building a lot more energy for Google to potentially just continue to go up here. And if you ask me what I think the target's going to be for this, it's hard to say. I think you can look into different fib levels and try and get an idea. Usually 2.72 is it's a potential good zone for it to go to on the log here, and 2.72 right now is 324, right? And there's a lot of resistance before you even get up there. If you look at a linear scale, that might give you a little bit more, conservative or more reasonable targets. If it ends up going to the 2.618 here to end the cycle, which is $261.90, that would probably be somewhere around the arc up here. And I can totally see maybe sometime in 2025, late 2025 or so, the price could potentially just kind of push through and gravitate up to this arc up here if it's able to push through over here. I don't think it's going to go straight up there. It's probably going to toss a little bit of volatility, get stuck underneath over here, maybe even back test the 1.414 here around $179. because you have a lot of horizontal zone over here to consider back testing, right? So entirely possible for it to come back down to 1.4 around $179.78. Back test this area of breakout before building up more energy, pushing through, and then maybe taking its time, push through the arc, come back test the arc, and eventually make it to the 2.618 level over here, maybe sometime late 2025 is entirely possible. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. The Ichimoku, it's not really going to tell me too much right here because price is kind of already way outside the Ichimoku cloud. So at this level, I think we really have to kind of rely on both the Bollinger Band. The Bollinger Band is expanding, right? You have to rely on the Gann square here, as well as some of the Fibonacci levels that I'm showing you. That's kind of what I'm seeing with Google. I think it's probably going to end up going up. I'm not seeing the trend necessarily exhausting quite just yet, although we are starting to kind of go up here on bearish divergence. So that's why I'm saying I think you might have a little bit of a resistance here, because you already have kind of like on the monthly, you already have a little bit of a bearish divergence here. On the weekly, you also have a little bit of bearish divergence over here too that's trying to get over. So I think it probably needs some time to kind of cool off and sideways. I don't think it's just going to push right through right off the bat. That's my thought on Google. Now, somebody also asked me about Nvidia and AMD. I'm just going to reiterate, I don't really have anything new to say about Nvidia, to be completely honest with you. My thoughts on Nvidia has not changed, and this is the monthly chart Nvidia. And I did this monthly chart Nvidia based on the Gann chart here from the beginning, and you can see how these arcs really mean something over here and over here. I really think that the current cycle is very, very similar and very mirroring the last cycle, if you will, both in terms of the RSI as well as in terms of the Gann square chart over here, where it kind of stuck underneath the arc here for a while. It started underneath the arc here for a while, and it's ticking off, right? It's just taking its time to kind of tick off. It's probably going to end up gravitating up to the horizontal line over here, which is $350 on exhaustion. I think this trend is exhausted. I'll show you why. But it still probably have a lot of juice in the tank to go before the cycle really ends. If it doesn't hit up there, it could potentially prematurely end the cycle, not necessarily at the horizontal Gann level up there, but it could potentially end it a little bit earlier, such as if it's able to push through the 2.272, which is currently where it's getting rejected over here. If it's able to push through this level, then it might end the cycle here at 2.618, which is $227.99. Still a lot of gains from here. If it's able to push through, then I think the horizontal line up here is going to be potentially a reasonable target for it to meet, right? Which is right at the 3 level, by the way, of the log fib level. We can potentially end the cycle up here around $350. It's kind of where I'm seeing here with Nvidia. It's starting to build up a little bit more of like a bearish divergence here on the monthly, and that's okay, because price, if you look at it like for example this cycle over here, 2 cycles before that, price can even go up on bearish divergence, and that's okay. It didn't really hit the next Gann level though, right? That's what I'm saying. Like you could potentially have a little bit of a premature end to the cycle. So if it ends up ending the cycle around 2.618, great, that's fine. If it ends up going higher than 3, that's fine too. It can push through and end up going to the 3.618 over here, around $730. I don't think it has enough energy to push through that. I think that the bull cycle, as it made like a 10, 12x, a lot of the energy has already been expanded. So I don't think it's necessarily going to get up there all that much anymore. Now, why do I think that the trend is exhausting? Because you look at the Bollinger Band, it's basically going through the same thing over the last 2 cycles, right? You have the Bollinger Band expansion, which tells you it's a very parabolic phase of the bull trend. And as you continue to have a little bit of exhaustion, you have exhaustion over here where we went 7 or 8 months sideways. You have exhaustion over here where it went like 5 months straight, sideways. And you also have exhaustion here where you went like 4 or 5 months here sideways here. I would argue maybe even 7 months sideways, right? The trend has exhausted. The Bollinger Band has already came from the negative back up to the positive, right? So you are probably at a stage where you're probably around late cycle over here. You might have a little bit more room to kind of go up, but it might be a little bit exhausted. So I'm just kind of letting you know my thoughts. I could be wrong. One stock that's related to that I'd like to talk a little bit more about is AMD. I think it's important to kind of go side to side here. I also got requested to talk about AMD. What I'm going to say right now is, am I worried about AMD right now because it's just kind of done nothing for the entire year 2024? The answer is no, because it's done nothing and it's been going down on declining volume, which tells me that this whole price action over here is completely meaningless. You know what happened last time I saw something like this was over here around 2017, where it just kind of went sideways and did nothing for an entire year, and price just kind of goes sideways and down. And on declining volume, all it takes just a little bit of volume for you to kind of kick up, and next thing you know, you can have a big leg up. That's kind of what I'm seeing with AMD. Now, you also can say, oh, it's kind of broken underneath the 20-minute moving average. It's not a great look. I don't like that. Doesn't mean it has to get to the lower Bollinger Band to like the 90s. I don't think so. The reason why is, you also have something similar that happened over here, the cycle too. And it got underneath the 20-month moving average, but eventually all it takes is just a little bit of volume, kind of push the price up a lot higher. So I'm not really too entirely worried about AMD. Matter of fact, I think the risk-reward ratio, because it's been going down and declining volume, the risk-reward ratio for AMD is actually probably pretty good. And I don't know when the cycle is going to be over, but all I can say is that I think it's still above the Ichimoku cloud up here. I don't think it's going to necessarily have to come back test the cloud, right? But yeah, I mean, like the bottom of the cloud, the top of the cloud is like around the mid 90s. I don't think it's going to come back and back test that. Just like over here, it didn't really do that. We are losing some support here, right? The 20-month moving average, the tank in the kitchen here on the monthly, on the weekly, you're underneath the cloud here. So it's not the greatest look, but the one thing that is really making me feel a little bit more confident about it is really the volume. It really is just seems like all these price actions may be a little bit meaningless here, because the volume is telling me that, hey, maybe things are probably still okay. I'm bullish on AMD. Matter of fact, I actually think that right now what it's doing right now is completely expected, because you're basically back testing this horizontal zone over here once over here and twice over here. You're basically double tapping that area and on declining volume. And if you're going to have a logical area where it bounces, this probably would be a very logical area for it to bounce. That's kind of what I'm seeing here at AMD. Now, if you're talking about Fibonacci level from the cycle higher to the cycle low over here, actually, matter of fact, I already had a Fib level, but instead of being drawn that way, I drew it from the cycle high here around the dot-com bubble, all the way to the cycle low over here around 2015, and basically it's the same cycle low here in 2008, right, from the Great Financial Crisis. You can see that it just simply got rejected here at 1.414, and it's basically back testing almost perfectly at the 1.272. Can it tap the 1.272 again? Possible, but I think it's finding some support over here at the horizontal level over here. So all I'm saying is I'm not really seeing anything bad here. And if you're also looking at from this cycle high to cycle low, you're also getting rejected as where you're expected at 1.272, as well as getting support here almost perfectly at the 0.786, right? If you're basically breaking through the 0.786, that generally means that it's a bullish chart. I think there's probably going to be some bullish continuation that's going to happen once volume kicks in. That's what I think about AMD. Now, the biggest question, which is going to be almost impossible to answer, but what should I get into? Should I get into AMD or should I get into Nvidia? I'm going to do the AMD over Nvidia chart here. And I think the answer is really depending on your time frame. This is the monthly chart for AMD over Nvidia. As you can see that really, if you buy AMD against Nvidia, you're basically betting a little bit on a falling knife because Nvidia has just way outperformed AMD over the years, ever since really like the dot-com bubble, right? The question would be, okay, so are we at an area where we could end up having some relative outperformance at AMD? Because there are a period of time where AMD, for like a few years, you can end up having some outperformance at AMD over Nvidia, right? Are we so overextended to the downside where Nvidia is probably going to end up outperforming AMD here for a short period of time? It's possible, because if you look at the RSI for this AMD over Nvidia chart, you can see that we're kind of getting to the RSI bottom over here, right? We got to the RSI bottom over here around 2007, and you see like there's a relative outperformance of AMD over Nvidia for like 2 to 3 years. And you also have another RSI bottom over here around October 2015. You have a relative increase in outperformance here for 2 years of AMD versus Nvidia, although it is falling by a lower low here, but you're also having this on a bullish divergence on RSI. That's why you had this huge bounce up over here, right? The thing right now is we're kind of entering a zone over here. It's like, yeah, it's kind of really way oversold here in terms of AMD over Nvidia. There's a possibility where it can bounce up in Nvidia, and AMD could potentially outperform Nvidia for maybe about a year or two. I think it's entirely possible, just because of how oversold this AMD over Nvidia chart is. But I also don't really see any, like, at least over here, you can see that there's a bullish divergence to kind of help you to think that, right? Over here, you don't really have a bullish divergence, but it's just way oversold, so they end up having a big bounce. I think we might be in an area here, even though we don't have a bullish divergence, I think it's possible for AMD to kind of outperform Nvidia a little bit over the next maybe 12 to 18 months. I think it's entirely possible. If you ask me about the target for AMD, you remember Nvidia, my target was probably around like 350. And if it doesn't hit there, I think it's okay. For AMD, I actually think that the target is very similar. If you think about Nvidia being 350, I can think of AMD being 325, which is going to be 1.618, which I think is a completely logical level for it to hit during a bull cycle on a log scale. So I think they might probably perform in par. If Nvidia end up underperforming, or if AMD end up outperforming here a little bit, then it could potentially overshoot here a little bit, and it could potentially go a little bit higher. I think and it's entirely possible. Now, one last thing I want to do is to kind of do a little bit of a Gann chart here on the monthly. I'm going to go all the way back down to the 1970s here, because I think that the more data we get, the better it is for, again, to kind of tell you what's going on. The number that I'm going to choose is going to be 1,440, if I can get that number here. And the number I'm going to use here is 1. And if you just kind of look at this Gann chart, you can see that this has given you really remarkable market symmetry, right? Where it's just been going from arc to arc. And we passed through this arc here, we passed through this arc here, and that's what the 2022 bear market was happening, is basically got rejected here at the angle, came back down, back test the arc here, and it went back up, got rejected here at the horizontal zone, right? But you're basically hitting the horizontal zone over here. I think it's probably going to end up finding support here. It's probably going to end up going up higher. Where is it going to go? Maybe the angle up here. If you're thinking about potential relative outperformance, could AMD hit like 540 against Nvidia this cycle? I don't know. I just don't think it necessarily has enough energy to kind of push all the way up there. But that's going to be the next Gann level. It's going to be up here. It's going to be 550. I do not know the answer to that. Okay. All I'm saying is I think 325 is a reasonable target for AMD over the next couple of years, all the way into 2026, 2027. I think 325 is possible. Does it go a lot higher than that? It depends on a lot of things. Could it end up hitting this area up here around like $500 in August of 2028? Maybe, right? But all of these things are speculative. All I'm going to say is these are still bullish charts. There could be some volatility coming from Google, that it can come back down and back test some things. I think Nvidia is on the uptrend. It's probably going to continue the uptrend here very slowly, but I think it's going to keep going up. And so is AMD. I think AMD is probably getting close, if not already found its bottom over here on declining volume. So the risk-reward ratio skews towards reward. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.